Good afternoon, everyone. If you need Bulgarian translation, just to warn you, I'm going to be speaking English, I'm afraid. I know. I've promised my colleagues here that if I come back a third time, I will learn some Bulgarian. Finding spare time is a challenge in my job, as you can imagine. It's very lovely to see you all. I am going to try to share more of our experiences with you this afternoon and hopefully give you an opportunity to reflect and discuss some ideas and things that we've done and maybe see how that might impact on what you do in your schools. I trust we have a selection of people in the room, teachers, principals perhaps, others working in education. Many of our questions and ideas will be directed at teachers and at people in roles of responsibility. But if you're not a teacher or a principal or someone leading teachers, please just think in the abstract about how you would like teachers to be applying some of these principles, because we all have a role to play in improving our teaching in our countries. So this is a workshop. It's going to be much more interactive than my presentation earlier, and I'm delighted to say I'm not doing it on my own. When I received an email from my colleagues and friends here asking me to come back and speak to you about my school, my first question was, yes, of course, I would love to, but can I bring someone with me? And as I told you earlier, I was very privileged to appoint a great team around me last year. And one member of that team is with me, Gemma Bey's. Gemma has been with me since last summer. She has started the school with me. She is an absolutely fundamental member of my team. And she won't like this because she doesn't like the praise, but I could not have done the job I did last year without her. It would be impossible. And I think you'll see why this afternoon. So I'm going to pass over to Gemma.
Thank you. Well, firstly, I hope I get this correct, but dobre došli. I hope that is correct. Thank you. I feel very, very privileged to be here. I'd like to thank you very much. It's my first time to Bulgaria. We've obviously been here 3 days. It's an absolutely beautiful country. We've been met with absolute great warmth, and it really is, honestly, on behalf of Anabel and I, it is our privilege to be here. So thank you. I would like to just give you a very, very brief introduction to who I am. My name is obviously Gemma. I am a languages teacher. I teach French and Spanish. I obviously currently work at Ark Elvin with Anabel. I've been very fortunate to be part of the initial stages of our transition project at Ark Elvin. I started my teaching career as a Teach First participant. For those of you that don't know, Teach First is very similar to Teach for Bulgaria. So Teach First has now been running, it began in London, but it now runs all over the country very successfully. So it's a decade now that it's been running, and it's having humongous impact across the whole of England. And I started my teaching journey in a very challenging school in North London, where I began my teaching practice. Teach First is all about ensuring that children from disadvantaged backgrounds have an equal chance in life. That was a mission that was very, very important to me, starting the Teach First program, and it is a mission now that has become even more important to me. I strongly believe that no child's education success should be limited by their socioeconomic background. And I've been very, very privileged to work with a number of fantastic teachers, Teach First ambassadors, but teachers across the whole of England who really hold this mission to their heart. And the fact that they are so mission-driven is absolutely crucial in terms of the success that these teachers have had. So I'm very, very pleased to be here with you all today. So let me introduce our workshop. So we are, if I can get this to work, could you do this for me? Thank you very much. So our key objectives of this workshop, we have 3 key objectives. And let me just wait 2 seconds while this gentleman helps sort out our technology. Excuse us. It's fine, thank you, yes. Thank you for being such a patient audience. Obviously, the children at school do not necessarily behave like this. That's very helpful. I may ask you, sir, to just flick on the button, because that would be equally helpful. Yeah, thank you very much. So I want you to obviously be able to visually see what we're hoping to achieve in this workshop. So as I said, we have 3 key objectives that we would like to discuss today. And those are the following. Annabelle's very kindly going to help with just a slide before that. Fantastic, here we go. So we're going to be focusing on 3-4 key things. The first thing is this: how do we recruit and develop teachers? That is something that has been a very significant part of our success thus far in our journey. What does great leadership look like? Anabel has alluded to this through her keynote speech, and we have a lot more to talk to you about in this regard. How do we do the best to our pupils? One thing that we will get across throughout this workshop is that our pupils are the center of everything that we do, all the decisions that we make. Many thanks. And we hope that by the end of this workshop, there are going to be lessons that you can take away and really reflect on, with the hope of thinking about actually what difference this could make in your context. So I'm going to ask you to do an activity for me. And the activity is this. Again, it doesn't work, so you're going to have to put it on for me, please. So the activity is this. You're seated in semicircles. I would like you, please, to, in a minute, turn to the person next to you. I'm going to give you 3 minutes. And in the next 3 minutes, I want you to think, what is the most important quality or attribute you should look for when you hire a teacher? There are a number of attributes on the board. For example, is subject knowledge the most important attribute? We have pedagogical knowledge. We have language skills. We have technical expertise. We have moral purpose. We have qualifications. We have commitment. We have ambition. We have experience. We have love of the subject. We have resilience. We have behavior management. For you, or if you are not a teacher, if you think, what would you say is the most important quality that you would look for when hiring a teacher? Or if you are a parent, what is the most important attribute that the teachers that teach your children have? 3 minutes, please. Discuss with your colleagues. Absolutely, of course. This doesn't. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. I am now going to ask us to do an activity. So I am very interested about this question and what you've been discussing. I would like you to do the following. When I say a particular attribute, if you think that that is the most important attribute you should look for when hiring a teacher, I would like you to raise your hand. So we begin. Who thinks that subject knowledge is the most important attribute? Subject knowledge. A raise of hands. Interesting. Okay, a couple. Thank you very much. Who thinks that pedagogical knowledge is the most important attribute? Raise your hand. A couple. Who thinks that love of a subject is the most important attribute? Interesting, a lot more people, thank you. Who thinks behavior management is the most important attribute? Fabulous. I'm just going to choose one more. Who thinks that moral purpose is the most important attribute? Thank you very much, very interesting.
Okay. Thanks, Gemma. Is it working? Yeah, thank you. Okay. Well, we are, but unfortunately we have limited time. I would love to continue this conversation. Gemma and I could talk about this for 10 hours. We have 40 minutes left. So I just want to tell you what we think is the most important thing. And there isn't a right or wrong answer to this question. All of these are important, and we want all of our teachers to have these skills. But the most important thing, and the thing that we recruit for, oh, could you go back for me? The thing we recruit for is moral purpose. And this is why. We recruit for attitude, not talent, because you can train talent and skill. Attitude is much harder to change. Doesn't mean you can't change it. We have growth mindset. We think anyone can change their attitude. But it's much harder to change. And where we can focus our energies is on training talent and training skill. So everyone can learn to teach if they believe the right things about children's education. That's our belief. And that's fundamental to the way that we recruit. And I'm going to tell you in a moment how we recruit teachers. The absolute key to everything we do is about developing that skill. But it's a complete waste of time if people don't have the right attitude. And some of the teachers who left us last year were good teachers, but they didn't have the right attitude. So I let them go. This is absolutely fundamental to my philosophy about education. If you don't like children, you should not work with children. And I'm astonished to meet teachers who don't like children. I had teachers who didn't like children when I was at school. I actually had a very negative experience of school. I was not a very good student. Academically, behaviorally, my experience was very different to many of my colleagues. But it's because I went to a poor school. And it's thanks to my family and other factors that I succeeded anyway. So I often put myself in the place of my children. This, for me, is the most important thing I do. Aside from keeping my children safe, which is obviously crucial, this is the most important thing I do. Develop people, recruit people, and promote people. So we're going to talk a bit about that. How we recruit people is quite extensive, and I'd like to make it more extensive, but this is what, with the resources we have, this is what we do. We advertise extensively. I have teachers who apply for jobs from across the world. I've just appointed 9 teachers from Australia who we interviewed by Skype. We sent someone out from our network to Australia, they interviewed them, they saw them teach. So we advertise extensively. We don't just stick with the local, because we have gaps in some of our workforce. In our application form, we ask people to explain values, to answer questions around values, what motivates them, what progress means in terms of children. If they're selected, and I would say a vast majority aren't selected to come to interview, they then have quite an extensive day, 2 days, 3 days, depending on the position, in school, and they do all of the following. We start with observation of a lesson, which Gemma generally does. They teach a lesson to our children, and Gemma decides whether this person is worth continuing with. If the lesson isn't good, then we ask the person to leave. But if the lesson has potential, we take them to interview, because you can tell immediately whether someone can bond with children. And even if the class misbehave, I've interviewed people and offered them jobs, because you can see the potential. All of our new staff are interviewed by children. And the children, with some support and moderation, choose the questions. And the children love giving me feedback, absolutely love it. And they give me their notes and they tell me. Very insightful, our children, and they ask excellent questions like, what makes a great science teacher? How would you enthuse me about science? How do you control behavior? Really great questions. They're shown around the school by pupils, which is part of the process, because I ask the pupils for feedback. They have to do a data task often, where they analyze results and tell me what they would do with those results. Often they have to observe, if it's a leadership position, they have to observe another teacher and tell me what they would tell that teacher. And finally, ends with an interview. The interviews last because you have to get through all those stages to get to the interview. And the interview, thankfully, is the main bit that I do. I have some brilliant people who do the other pieces. So it's extensive. And most importantly, I'm willing to not appoint. If I have a vacancy and I don't see anyone good, I don't take the teacher. Lots of people make that mistake. They just appoint someone who's not good enough because they're panicking. I don't do that, which creates issues. but it's more important in the long run. This is why it's so important. The McKinsey research I referred to earlier in my presentation in 2007, this was the findings, the impact of high-performing teachers on pupil progress against the impact of low-performing teacher. And you can see that with a low-performing teacher, progress quite often either stays the same or actually children regress. They go backwards in terms of their learning. And so that's why this is the most important thing I do. If I don't do this properly, then we'll never develop as a school and our children will never get better. So, my next question then, and I'm going to give you 1 minute, no more. Just talk to the person next to you. What does great teaching look like? 1 minute. Go ahead. Okay, thank you everyone. Just because of time, I'm going to move you quite quickly through some of these, so I apologize for that. The second question, what does great learning look like? 1 more minute. Okay, thank you everyone. Okay, so I thought it might be useful. I would love to take feedback, but we have a very limited amount of time, and I would really like to share as much as I can with you today, so I apologize that we don't have longer to take some thoughts. But I will share our thoughts on this. So I'm going to ask if we could have Gemma's microphone on as well. I'm going to ask Gemma the question. So, Gemma, for us, what does great teaching look like?
Okay, so for us, great teaching has many components. And as Anabel said in her keynote, we expect across our academy certain things to be in place. So for us, great teaching is where the learning is framed by an ambitious yet measurable learning objective. It is where all pupils are actively engaged. They're involved in the lesson, they're participating, but most importantly, they're enjoying their learning. Pupils need to enjoy their learning. We ensure that all our activities are varied. We make sure that they are meaningful. We make sure that the activities that students, our pupils, are given relate directly back to this learning objective, because the learning objective belongs to them as the pupils. We have it already in our heads, I have the knowledge. So actually those learning objectives belong to the pupils. So how do our activities make sure they link back to that objective? We ensure that there is an absolute clear system of sanctions and a clear system of rewards. Specific praise is given. Praise is not given for anything. Specific praise is given. There are many opportunities within our lessons for teachers to assess learning, and this is crucial, of all pupils. And there are many opportunities for pupils to demonstrate their learning, to show the teacher that they have understood the concepts. That, for us, is the most important thing, that the lessons we are providing our pupils with enable them to demonstrate progress. So as a teacher, by the end of my lesson, I am very clear about where all my pupils are and whether they have mastered the content or in some cases not, which enables me to then realize what I need to do and the follow-on that I need to take.
In terms of great learning?
So great teaching and great learning are very interlinked. They overlap. Many of the things I've mentioned about great teaching is what enables great learning. So good behavior management strategies, a lot of praise, reward systems, this is important. But there are other things important in great learning, and pupil engagement, yes. Opportunities for pupils in the class to do pair work, to do group work, to discuss their ideas, to be able to learn the social skills. They need to be able to learn how to disagree with each other effectively. That's crucial. They also need, and this has been a very big issue for us, something that has been very successful in our classrooms with the number of pupils that we have for whom English is their second language and for whom English is often a barrier. We have incorporated a lot of thinking time into our lessons. So pupils are given the space and they are given time to reflect on their answers before having to provide an answers. Whether that is independent thinking time, whether that is thinking time that they have been able to do in groups, in pairs, collaboratively.
Thank you, Gemma. So this is what it looks like. We have a cyclical approach to developing our teachers. And all of the things which Gemma's just mentioned form the basis of what we look at. And it's really important we don't just keep introducing new things without embedding anything. So often we'll look at the same thing, but we'll look at it in a variety of different ways. Starting with recruitment, I've talked you through our recruitment process. When someone has been successfully appointed, we then go into induction. Now, induction, for me, is absolutely crucial. What do teachers do before they start? So those teachers in the room who've done Teach for Bulgaria, you had a summer institute. You had some time before you went into the classroom. That's your induction into teaching. It's absolutely crucial. We think very carefully about how to induct our teachers into all of the things we expect. We then have ongoing training, and Gemma is going to tell you what that training looks like shortly in more detail. We evaluate our teaching constantly, and we're going to talk a bit about observation and what that looks like. We manage performance, so we make sure that actually what's happening in the classroom is having an impact on children's outcomes. And finally, we find talent and promote people. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone becomes a senior leader. It means we find what people are passionate about, and we give them some responsibility in that area. Now, for some of our teachers, that means running the drama club. For some of our teachers, it means being responsible for whole school behavior. It really varies, but if you feel part of the change and part of the development of the school, then you're going to be a much better teacher. One of the things we do a lot, though, is we think about how to train. And it's really crucial that we think about what should we focus on. Why did we come up with these areas of teaching? And I have spent years since I became a teacher thinking about this and reading books and researching and visiting schools and thinking about best practice and talking to other teachers. Gemma's done the same. Many of my colleagues have done the same. And so we use a number of ways to develop what we should focus on. We look at best practice. What is working in other schools? Visit what's happening in other schools that's having an impact. We talk about our experience, and we do that with all teachers. We listen to new teachers' experience because you can learn from every teacher, regardless of how long they've been teaching. And we look at research. Now, I just want to have a little warning around research. We've brought with us some of our favorite education books. We have hundreds of them, but we just selected 8. More than happy for you to have a look at them at the end if you'd like. But I think it's really important not to see any solution as a fix-all. It's crucial. So the techniques which we use from one particular book, Gemma, could you grab Lemov and hold it up? There's an American educator called Doug Lemov, who I've worked with for a number of years, and he has this fabulous book, Teach Like a Champion, where there are 62 techniques. Now, we use 3 of them in our school, and we will keep doing 3 of them until our teachers are expert at them. Then we might adopt another one, but we're not going to give everyone this book and tell them to learn all 62. It's a complete waste of time. Also, this is in an American context, which is different to our context. So it's our responsibility as school leaders to take the techniques and translate them into our techniques. We don't just take what works in a school in New Jersey and plonk it into a school in London. That doesn't necessarily work. We think, how does this work for our teachers in our context? So I'm a massive fan of research. I'm a big fan of innovation and trying new things. What I'm very wary of is doing it across the board. When we do something new, we pilot it with a group, we trial it, we test it, we monitor it, we don't do it with everyone. And then we roll it out across the school if it works. The same way we would do if we were scientists and we were trialing something new. We need to be professionals in our sector as well. It's really important. So I'd like you to think now about your experience. If you're a teacher or a principal, how do you develop teaching? Or maybe you work in the profession. If not, what do you think is the best way of developing teachers? Opinions, please. I'll give you 2 minutes for that one. Again, I'd be really fascinated to hear from some of you afterwards if you have ideas, because we come with great humility, knowing that we have a huge amount still to learn. So if you have ideas, please share them with us. We'd love to hear new ideas for developing teaching. For us, if I could only pick one thing, then it would be about this. Have you ever seen yourself teach? Hands up anyone who's ever seen themselves teach. It's the most painful experience. Speaking as someone who's been videoed all morning, and I'm never watching this video, you see all of your personal traits and your habits and the things that annoy you about yourself, and oh my gosh, my hair looks bad, and all this sort of stuff. But what's really powerful is you see the children, and you see their reaction. And as a teacher, it's hard to see all the children, especially when you're at the beginning of your career. Seeing yourself teach is so powerful. And I believe really, really strongly that observation is the most powerful form of teacher development. Now, people are often surprised when I say that, because observation, depending on your context, carries lots of different connotations. Many people see observation as a tool of judgment, as a way of being measured. And it is that. It is. It has to be. We're educating children. It's crucial that we have good teachers. But more importantly, it's developmental. And if you do it properly, it has such a profound impact on teaching. This book, which was written by an English educator, Professor Tim Brighouse, refers to a piece of research actually done in the 1980s by an American researcher called Judith Little. And in her years and years of research, she found that the best schools have this culture around developing teachers. They provide opportunities for teachers to talk about teaching to each other, teachers to observe each other teach, to plan and organize and evaluate their teaching together, and to teach each other. And that's the basis of all of our approaches to teacher development. We always come back to these four things. I would say that we do the first three really well in our school. I think we still need to work on number 4. That's partly due to time constraints. But I'd say we do the first 3 really well. And we will continue to do them as well as we can, and we'll continue to get better because we're never quite good enough. And the 4th one we'll definitely work on. So one more question from me before I hand back to Gemma. If you're a teacher, for how many minutes were you observed last year? And what impact did it have on your practice? I'd just like you to think about that just for 30 seconds in silence. I'll give you 30 seconds in silence. Okay, thank you. Now you've shared it with your partner. I'd like you to share it with the whole group. Share with the whole group. 1 more minute. What are your experiences? 1 more minute. Okay. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you. I imagine I've asked this question of many different people. And I've asked this question, I've delivered similar sessions with lots of different people, including lots of principals and teachers in England, of course. And the results are quite variable. What we're doing is a little bit different to what many, many people, the majority, are doing. So I'll just illustrate what we're doing. Gemma, for how many minutes were you observed last year?
Okay, so last year, our observations are 20 minutes each. I was observed last year 6 times by external monitoring. I was observed 6 times by internal monitoring. That is our system in England. You have an observation once every 5 to 6 weeks. And I was observed by colleagues 10 times. So last academic year, I was observed 24 times, which equates to about 480 minutes of observation. Yeah.
What impact did it have on your practice?
So observation, obviously, absolutely crucial. The biggest impact on my practice, it obviously continually makes you think and reflect upon what am I doing well, What are my areas for development? How can I improve those? How can I be more creative in my teaching? How can I think of new ideas? And maybe most importantly, am I making sure that I am catering for the needs of all the pupils in my lesson? If not, how do I do that more? And how do I challenge them more? How do I extend their thinking? Really gets you to reflect. Without those observations, then I wouldn't have had necessarily the time to really think about these really important things that make me go on to be a better teacher, because we all know as teachers, your job is never done. And anybody who looks to say, oh, I'm a good teacher, stop, it will never happen, because you can always be better, which is sometimes frustrating. But it is the way that it is. You can always be better, and you must be committed to always want to learn more.
Thank you. Your turn.
So I'm going to speak to you briefly about, in our context, what developing teachers looks like. This is something that is so crucial for us. As Anabel talked about, a lot of our work in the initial year went about changing the climate for learning. Absolutely important, crucial. Values and our expectations. But then how do we develop our colleagues? Absolutely key point. Everything we do is driven by data. So we look and we research and we investigate what needs to be improved. What in our school needs to be improved, and how are we going to do that? And the way we find that out is we look at the data. We look at the data of our teachers. We look at the data of our pupils. We look at data which is given to us around. We look nationally of schools in the local area. We think outside of our own context. So everything we do is driven by data. We coach teachers on how to improve learning in their classroom. And when I say coach, it is very important the word coach is used, coaching, because this is not a tool of judgment. The aim of coaching is to support colleagues, all colleagues, to develop their practice and give them feedback. Everybody, like all our pupils, deserve consistent feedback. All our teachers equally deserve consistent feedback that is going to help them improve. Planning, very, very important. We plan with the end in mind. We think about what do our students really need. We go from the highest level that we want them to be, and we work backwards. Because how do you plan day to day if you don't have an overall goal or vision of where you want your students to get to, the people that you want them to become? Planning is very important. It guarantees that we have strong lessons, and it means that we can not always avoid, but we can predict areas that may be more of a challenge for us. Meaningful training. I'm sure that many of us as teachers, Anabel and I, have been to some dreadful training. In England, there is a lot of poor training which costs a lot of money, and teachers get nothing from it. It is a waste of time. Meaningful training is absolutely crucial, because teachers have to feel that they're turning up to something that is going to benefit their practice. That they think, yes, I'm going to take that and I'm going to use it, and it's going to make a difference. That is what meaningful training is. And it is crucial to strengthen our culture. Everybody wants to be developed. Everybody wants to improve. So our meaningful training is incredibly key to make sure that actually the knowledge that we want to impart, the skills that we want our teachers to have, stick. And then we have fabulous teachers that now are ambassadors that teach other teachers, so the learning is spread. This is a key idea I would like to share with you. The real purpose of observation and feedback is not to evaluate a teacher, but to develop them. In our context, we are very fortunate because this is something that our teachers, the majority of them, believe. And they are very open to observation, and they are very open to feedback as long as that process is well established and the feedback that they are getting is meaningful. Teachers grow with bite-sized feedback that you can practice to perfection. One of our biggest successes that we have at Ark Elvin is we have begun a process whereby teachers are observed weekly for 20 minutes every week. And then they sit down with their coach and they discuss the lesson. And the coach is specifically trained in a methodology which we call instructional coaching. Now, if anybody is interested, we have a book here also which we've based some of our methodology on loosely. Again, it originates from America. It's chapter 2, leverage leadership. It's something that we have taken and modeled for our own environment. But what happens is the coach is trained in a specific way of feedback that enables teachers to practice. And that is the crucial element. At the end of every lesson, the coach will choose one thing. If anybody has been in the situation that I have been in, where somebody sat down and said to me, this was wrong, 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 that's very unhelpful. That is not going to improve your teaching. So what we do, we take one piece of the lesson. The coach takes one thing that we call a highest leverage action step. And that step may be something as simple as, when you are speaking, ensure that the children are not speaking. That is crucial. If you do not have that, then how are you going to progress? So we choose one highest leverage action step, and the teacher has that all the week until the next observation the next week, and the coach goes back and sees, have they mastered that step? If they haven't, the step remains. It will stay the same until that teacher has had the ability to practice it to perfection. And practice is absolutely crucial. And one of our common language at Ark Elvin that we use and we say with absolute strength is, practice makes permanent. The more you practice something, the more permanently it will become embedded. This for us has been a crucial idea and has really led to the development of, I would arguably say, the majority of teachers. I'm going to briefly talk to you about the components of our training. We recognize, and Anabel is very good at this, she recognizes the most important people in our building are our teachers. Because without the teachers, we have no school. So the teachers are our most valuable asset. And because they are our most valuable asset, we need to reflect that. We don't, in our context, have the ability to give teachers money. No. So what do we do, which isn't money, that makes teachers feel valuable? Well, we train them. And this is the things that we do. All teachers have the ability and are mentored and coached, given a weekly observation and feedback. If we have teachers that are struggling, they are given action plans with detailed steps on what they need to do to improve. We give our teachers the opportunity to do accredited training within the network to increase their skills, to give them the opportunity to gain skills to get middle leadership and senior leadership positions. We have training, which isn't the same here in Bulgaria, but we have exam board training. So the tests that our children sit, we send our staff to this training so they know exactly how they can help their pupils succeed in these exams. We have whole school training days. Every year we have 10 days, which is training, which sadly is not like this. I'm speaking at you. In our training days, it's not like this. Our staff are involved. We do activities, very important. Every week, every department in the school has a co-planning meeting. That means they sit with their department and they plan the lessons for that week. They share ideas. They talk about what is not working. They talk about which classes are challenging. They talk about sharing strategies for individual pupils. This works very well for me. Can you try it? I'm struggling with this class, so maybe the teacher will observe another teacher with that specific class to see what can I learn? What is that teacher doing that makes that child sit there and learn? That's important. We use peer observation. As I said, colleagues regularly observe each other. We have an open door policy. If you come to our school, you are happily free to go anywhere you wish. Any classroom, the door is open. You can go, you can observe the lesson. We talk about learning. We make sure that everything we talk about is learning. We video lessons, as we discussed previously, so we can see ourselves actually delivering our practice. We ask for staff opinions. We give them surveys. We give them questionnaires. Every time they do training with us, we haven't had time for you to do this, otherwise you'd be here all day, but we give all our staff questionnaires at the end of our training to say, well, what was good? What do you feel that you need more of? Now you've had this training, what do you want more? We have one staff briefing every week, which Anabel leads. As our principal, she's incredibly visible. This is also very crucial. And we have a staff bulletin. Now, our staff bulletin is sent around weekly, which is sent on via email to all staff, and it compiles everything that has been successful in the school that week, everything that has gone on, all the fantastic things we celebrate, and we outline what is happening the next week, who is being observed, what is going on in our calendar, what our pupils are taking part of. Very important. That is something that has crucially built our culture. So, very quickly, because I have 1 minute, 4 keys. If I could say anything to you in terms of transformation and what has worked the best, number 1, regular observation. We never say, oh, we're too busy for this. We do it every single week. We lock in frequent and regular observations. We make sure that our coaches are choosing exactly the correct action steps for our colleagues so that we are sure that teachers are being provided with quality feedback that they will be able to go the very next day, the next 5 minutes, the next hour into their lessons, and it will make a difference. We make sure that our feedback is effective. You give feedback always face-to-face. Never via email, never through notes. Feedback is always done face-to-face. We give our colleagues time. And there is obviously accountability. We make sure that through this process, that it's all good and well us spending hours on this, but this has to translate into better pupil outcomes. Otherwise, what is the point? So we ensure that we track these action steps, and we have several ways in which we track to ensure that the feedback that our teachers are receiving is put into practice. That is absolutely crucial. That's my last thing, sorry. So just in 5 seconds, this is an interesting photo I'd like to share to you. The right action step is the first domino. It is trying to show that you get that first action step correct. You give your teacher the right feedback, and then you knock it down. You see the one behind it in terms of dominoes. It begins the process of a journey to absolutely outstanding teaching. This is why we use this picture.
So if you follow a model that, as we do with weekly observation, it means that the teachers in our school receive as much observation in 1 year as the average teacher in England will receive in 20. So it has quite a profound impact as long as it's done properly. We're nearly out of time, and we wanted to focus, thanks sir, we have 5 minutes. We wanted to focus on a couple of final things. The main thing we wanted to share with you is how we develop teaching, because as I said, if I have a limited time and I could only talk about one thing, this is the most important thing. But I just want to share a couple of words about leadership and our pupils. So first of all, I think it's really important to think about what we mean by leadership. And I use the word leadership, not management. Because for me, leadership, these are all members of my senior team doing their jobs. There's a picture of me teaching as well, which I try to do when I can. Gemma's up there on results day. We have our colleague Mike, who will kill me if he knows I'm using this photo, celebrating with the children. And then the top right-hand corner, that's my entire middle and senior leadership team on our summer residential. And part of, as you'll see, part of leadership is being inspired and enjoying your job. That's a big part of what we do. But most importantly, we model our values. Absolutely everything we do. So the values I told you about earlier, which we talk about for the pupils, are as important for us. And I talk to my colleagues about demonstrating integrity, demonstrating courage, etc. What that looks like for us as leaders is that all of my leadership team must be excellent teachers. We can't judge other people's teaching if our teaching's not good enough. We model what we expect in every way, from how we talk to people, to how we dress, to our punctuality, attendance. Everything we do, we're modeling, not only to the children, but also to our colleagues. We do not accept excuses. I start every leadership team meeting with what we call highlights, because I've been in many leadership teams in my career where people start a meeting by moaning about what's not working, where you sit and talk about the problems. Oh, this isn't working. And you could spend hours talking about what's not working. So we start every meeting with highlights, and then we move on. And there's no moaning, absolutely no moaning allowed. We have problems, we talk about it individually, but as a team, we're solution-focused. This is crucial for me, absolutely crucial. Nobody shouts in our school. No teachers shout, no adults shout. And so we have to model that. And I tell people why. So because I won't accept anyone shouting at my child, so why would we shout at someone else's child? And therefore, we can't shout at each other. We don't use sarcasm, ever, with anyone. And we certainly don't discriminate. We have high expectations of all of our pupils and colleagues. As I said earlier, attitude is the main thing. We believe everyone can do it. Now, not everyone is with us, and some people leave. But we believe they can do it if they want to do it. We have shared language. We talk about the same things. We talk about it the same way, and we share our values. And finally, we're pupil-centered at all times. At all times. That's crucial. So everything we do, we turn back to the pupils. And I, in meetings with my team, I will always try and, okay, so yeah, but what about the children? Yes, okay, we don't like the gate, but what about the children? Let's talk about the children. Gemma, I'm just going to rattle through the next bit just to save us some time. So this is what happens for our pupils. They go to university. These three children all got into university in the summer. They all also applied for bursaries for money because they all come from low-income families, and they all received £9,000 bursaries to go to university. They're real success stories. As you can see, we're celebrating in the centre of London with them there. Our pupils have very strict behaviour routines. They know how to sit quietly as a whole school, how to line up. This is during a rainy, wet lunch when we have to put everyone inside, and they go one row at a time to the next lesson in complete silence. This is a quote from our Chief Inspector of Ofsted, the person who runs the inspectorate in England. He says structure liberates. I completely agree with him. If children don't have structure, they don't have the freedom to learn. It's the same for teachers. If teachers don't have structure, they don't have the freedom to teach. Last couple of slides. Our children have opportunities. These two young people are head boy and head girl. They run the leadership team within our school. They're responsible for coordinating lots of school pupil leadership roles within the school, and they do a fabulous job. And as we've alluded to earlier, our children have an opportunity to go out into the community and help other people. Crucially for us, we have a very diverse population. Outside of our school, it's quite segregated. So within our school, we find opportunities to make people integrate. This is sports day, and these two boys outside of school do not live in the same communities. In school, they do. Most importantly, we focus on outcomes. It's the most important thing we can do. The best thing we can do for our children is to get them good results because it will help them have a great life. That's crucial. And so, just to conclude, I'm going to put these up on the board, on the screen. I'm more than happy to share these slides with anyone who wants them. But we have some very clear guidelines as to how our children should be supported to get the best results. Everyone needs to know every child. Everyone needs to be able to plan for every child. We need to use parents. We need to empower our children, and we need to, as leaders, empower our teachers. Apologies for rushing, but we're running out of time. really important that our teachers feel that they have control of the learning of their children. That's what these points are about. So, Gemma and I, for the last 3 days, have been thinking, how can this help people in another country where the context is probably different and you have different structures and you may have different challenges to us? But these are some of the things we think are transferable to a Bulgarian context, but to any context. We think every teacher makes a difference. And we observed a couple of teachers the other day. We were lucky enough to go out to Samakov and go to some schools. And one of the teachers we observed is in his first year of teaching. He's been teaching for 2 months. That teacher had a very challenging class in front of him. Very challenging class. Behavior in the school outside of his classroom was questionable. But he was doing a great job with those kids. I would be happy to have that lesson in my school. Context is only a context. Focus on what you can do, not on what you can't do. Be solution focused. Stress is what you can't control, not what you can control. All children can achieve. Please don't forget that. Remember that we have the absolute best job in the world, and you will make a difference to many, many lives. And I still, although I didn't go to a good school, I still think about my best teachers, because they made a difference to my life, as did all the teachers I've had since at university and in my career. We would love to take questions, but we've run out of time. So why don't we just hang around for a little bit, and do get in touch if there's anything you'd like to know. Thank you very much, everyone.